scab for the bosses, don't listen to their lies. Us poor folks haven't got a chance unless we organize. Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
Howdy.
Hey everyone.
Which side are
This is the
This
podcast.
is our podcast that we created and make every Monday and put it onto Spotify to go into your ear holes.
Absolutely, and we have a good time doing it.
Very good time.
Phoebe, so it came to my attention that on the Twitter I may have incited violence against Ben Shapiro.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, listen.
I feel like
Allegedly, I support it.
I feel like challenging someone to a fight though
Yeah.
seems like that's legal.
Okay, if, like, Logan Paul, YouTube guy, can, like, challenge UFC people,
Yeah.
isn't that a thing? Like, I feel like that's just what you're doing. You're like,
Yeah.
you
Honestly,
were just saying.
If
see
everybody
me.
tweets at Ben Shapiro, could we live stream a boxing match of me against him?
Please let's.
Because I'm a little frail gay boy, but like I feel like so is Ben Shapiro. So,
Exactly.
so it'd be an interesting
You could
fight.
absolutely fucking take
I
Ben
feel like
Shapiro.
I for sure could.
I don't feel like you're very frail.
No, I don't think I'm frail. I'm not. I guess I'm not like aggressive, but
Sure.
Like,
well,
as a person.
I am.
true. Honestly, Phoebe could also fight Ben Shapiro.
I would destroy Ben
Yeah,
Shapiro.
there's no contest there. I feel like Phoebe would have it. Holy shit. Anyway,
Anyway.
yeah, Ben Shapiro, fight us.
It's on.
Oh, my name's Taylor,
Oh, yeah, I'm Phoebe. Hey.
and yeah, remarks,
Remarks,
conversation, podcast, communism,
All that good shit.
bad things
Bad
usually.
things. America sucks. Etc. Well, today's episode was inspired by me coming across some, like, post 9/11 propaganda on Twitter and then sending Taylor a bunch of voice messages, like, was it, like, really late at night? It's
No, it
always
was
really
early
late at night.
it was on a
Oh,
Saturday
yeah, that's
morning.
right.
It was early
That's
in a
right.
Saturday.
Yeah, that's right. It was, like, 11 a.m. on a Saturday morning. I was like, I think 9/11 might have been an inside job. So anyway, that's what we're talking about today.
Yeah, we're going full red tape across the like picture board.
Yes.
Charlie in the mailroom.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's us today.
For sure. But it's gonna be good. Take it away, Phoebe.
Okay. So we're doing like a quasi debate. Not really, because we pretty much agree with each other. But basically, Taylor and I are just I'm gonna take the side of 9/11 was an inside job. Taylor's gonna take the side of, like, arguing that it wasn't really an inside job. But like I said, we kind of agree on shit with each other a lot. So we're
true.
kind of just, like, discussing back and forth, like, the possibilities more so is what it is.
Yeah, for sure. And again, I feel like it could have been an inside.
Yeah.
Like, who fucking
Yeah.
knows? But
We can get into it.
but more than anything, I feel like we're gonna be talking kind of towards the end about a lot of the propaganda
Yes.
around it, which
Yes.
whether it was or wasn't an inside job was very heavily being like, yo, this gives America the divine manifest destiny, you could say, to like go
Yes.
fuck over whatever Middle Eastern country we want. So,
Exactly. Exactly. So, to just get it going, I guess, so there's kind of, like, two different ways that a lot of, like, 9/11 truthers go with, like, their theories for, like, what happened. And there's one that's, like, the U.S. government literally did this and planned this. And then there's one that's, like, the U.S. government knew about it and just let it happen. So with the idea of, like, the U.S. government orchestrated this, I'll just start with this part about this oil pipeline that was going to be being created in, it was, like, going through Afghanistan. Where else? Afghanistan, Turkmenistan, and Pakistan. So, okay, so basically, so in like the 1990s, Russia had a large control over like the pipelines in the Middle East. So they wouldn't let like other countries use this pipeline network. So eventually, like, the countries that these pipelines were going to be going through decided that they needed to have their own independent like oil companies.
Yeah.
So 1995 is when they started working on like a proposition for this project. The U.S. gas company called Unocal, or oil company called Unocal, they partnered with the Saudi oil company called Delta, and they came up with their own idea for this independent project. And then there was a separate independent project that was being proposed by the Argentinian company called Bridas Corporation. So...
Why does every topic we discuss always come back to Russia? I swear to God.
I know. Literally, it's unfucking avoidable. It's unavoidable. The United States just hates Russia so much that, like, you can never separate the two.
It's true. Jesus.
Anyway, this shit's kind of complicated, but basically what happened was there was, so Unocal, the United States gas company, joined with this Central Asian gas company called CENTGAS, and they were kind of fighting with the other company that was the Argentinian company, the Bridas Corporation. So because this pipeline was going to go through Afghanistan, they had to work with the Taliban. So the U.S. ambassador of Pakistan went and worked for CENTGAS as of 1997. And then the Taliban ended up selecting CENTGAS over the Bridas Corporation from Argentina. This is like a whole complicated fucking thing. Anyway, so then what happens is... Oh, and then Russia pulled out of the project. Then 1998, American embassies in Nairobi and Dar es Salaam, sorry if I'm saying that wrong, were bombed. The United States said Osama bin Laden did this, and so they like pulled all their shit out from the pipeline things. So then the Taliban leader said, oh, bin Laden has the Taliban support. So Unocal, the United States gas company, said, we're done, whatever, closed the offices in Afghanistan and Pakistan. So then the Taliban basically went with the other company.
From Argentina?
Oh my gosh, hold on.
Or was it the CENTGAS one?
Okay. So...
It is okay. It
oh my gosh,
like...
I'm losing it. Okay, they went, I believe it was the Argentinian one.
Yeah.
So then, September 11th happens. Obviously, soon following that, United States invaded Afghanistan and Iraq. And, okay, and then after this, the Asian Development Bank submitted this other, proposal for an oil company thing called PencePen, which was this British company. And the whole thing is, with this company, they did not go through Russia. They would allow the United States to get their oil from this Central Asian pipeline. So this is all fucking very complicated. Basically what happened was the United States had a pipeline thing with Afghanistan. They were battling Argentina for this. Then, like, allegedly, these embassies in the Middle East were bombed by Osama bin Laden. And then the United States was like, never mind, we don't want to do this. And then September 11th happened. And then the United States was like, we're going to go into Afghanistan and Iraq now. So anyway, my whole fucking thing with that is that, and this one, I'm like, yes, is that the United States... orchestrated 9/11 in order to invade Afghanistan and Iraq to take over this oil pipeline.
And so they didn't have to, like, work with the Taliban to do it, right?
Yes, quote unquote, yes. And also so that, like, they didn't have to go through these companies that were going to go through Russia, or these companies that were going to go through Argentina that did not want to have to work with the United States.
Yeah, no, I mean, I feel like that's a relatively reasonable theory to think, you know?
Sure, yeah.
At least it, like, makes more sense, you know? And again, it kind of goes back to, like, whether it was, like, orchestrated by the United States or they let it happen to do that, or even if they just, like, seized the opportunity, it's like they knew what they were doing either way, right?
Yes, for sure, yeah. So, yeah, that's one that I, like, am pretty, like,
set
on, as well as, like, around this time there was a lot of talk that, like, was it that Iraq had, like, nuclear bombs or some, like, crazy grade, like, weapons?
I think it might have been...
I cannot remember.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Iraq, yeah.
And anyway, and so that was just, there was, like, all of these reasons the United States had been talking about, like, invading these, well, they don't call it invading. The United States had been talking about, like, going to these countries in order to, either supporting the, like, civilians there, or to stop, like, the Taliban, or what have you. So, yeah, like, previous to 9/11, there had been talk of the United States wanting to invade these countries.
Oh, for sure. Well, and it's really interesting, too, because, like, I think we've kind of talked about this in some of our previous episodes, but how, like, the United States will have, like, a impending doom type, like, situation that's always happening. Like, whether it's, like, the war on communism or the war on terror or, you know, whatever it is, and they make it seem like, oh, this is threatening, like, your way of life. Like, we need to do that.
Yep.
And when you can get people on board with something that's, like, threatening their existence, then you have a blank check to do whatever you want over in that place.
Right.
Like,
well, it's, like, exactly as you were saying with the lavender scare. It's, like, again and again and again we see this tactic being used by America. Same thing with, like, ISIS. Same thing with China. Same thing, like... This is what is...
It's always North Korea.
Yeah. Like, my God, yes. Like, this is a constant tactic used by the United States. And with this situation, it was like, oh, Al-Qaeda, Al-Qaeda, Al-Qaeda. That was all they would fucking talk about. Like, Al-Qaeda, Bin Laden, and the Taliban is, like, this huge threat.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it has to do with, like, how things are painted in, like, the media, you know? Because, like... There'll be, like, tons of media coverage when, like, a country we don't like has something like this, or a country that we're, like, you know, we don't have influence over has, like, a terrorist group in it or whatever. Yep. But then if it's a country that we are supporting a terrorist group in, it's like no one reports on that, of course.
Exactly.
Because why the fuck would they?
Exactly. Well, and, like, literally with this oil pipeline thing, they did work with the Taliban. Like, they literally, which, I mean, I get that they kind of had to because that was, like, the sitting government of Afghanistan at the time, but it's like, y'all cooperated with the Taliban and, like, worked with them.
I know, it's kind of whack.
Which, I mean, is, you know, again, a very classic America thing that they always do.
Classic. Mark your bingo cards. Oh, yeah, we're going to make bingo cards and post them to the social meds. Anyway, well, I'll go with a little bit of a thing here. It's nothing wild per se, but you know, there's the big, like, jet fuel can't melt steel beams.
Yes.
That's like the classic
let's get into
saying.
It.
So one of the interesting things I found in that area of, like, 9/11 conspiracy is that, like, when the planes crashed into the Twin Towers, they damaged shafts that were used for utility, causing jet fuel to pour down the elevator shaft, and the impact of it set, you know, the building, there was an explosion, so a lot of things caught on fire. And while it is true that jet fuel does burn lower than it would take to actually melt a steel beam, the surrounding fire could would be ignited not just from jet fuel, but also from literally everything else that
Right.
caught on fire.
Yep.
And steel beams would begin to weaken at 593 degrees Celsius and would lose about 50% of its strength, which is something that jet fuel can burn at.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
it's not to say that, like, I guess it's correct in the sense that it couldn't just have been the jet fuel.
Yes.
But the buildings were on fire.
Yeah,
like,
and I mean it's filled with like all of this shit.
Yeah, papers,
insulation
like,
that's
yeah.
flammable, chairs, papers, computers, all this
Everything,
shit.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like that's
Yeah.
one of those arguments that it's like you're right, but it's like that's not the only thing that was like in the building was jet fuel.
Yeah, and I like my truthers side of this. I am not necessarily on with the belief that the towers had fallen due to controlled demolition. There's a huge, as you just said, the whole classic jet fuel can't melt steel beams thing. Like everybody who is interested in conspiracy theories at all knows that phrase. But basically there's this theory that there was like a planned demolition of these towers by the American government. So they had already like installed whatever the fuck, TNT or whatever it is that you need to blow up buildings. I don't know. And that they had basically blown them up as the plane was crashing into them. There is a piece as well saying that, and I'm such a dumbass, I should have linked what my fucking source was for this. I'm so stupid. But anyway, but eyewitnesses had repeatedly reported that explosions had happened before the collapse of both of the towers. Experts say that these theories are unreasonable, but I don't know. There was eyewitnesses that had that to say. I was like, what the fuck? There was a physicist from Brigham Young University.
Oh.
Yeah, which is, I just had to include this piece because I was like, BYU. Which, by the way, if you're not a native Utahn, BYU is the Mormon-owned university here in Utah, which I believe we got to talking about on our, like...
The Mormonism episode, probably?
Mormonism /
company towns, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But anyway.
Get up.
I digress. So, this physicist Stephen E. Jones from BYU and this architect Richard Gage, as well as Jim Hoffman, David Ray Griffin, etc., argue that these impacts from the airplanes and the resulting fires could not have weakened the building sufficiently, and that they would have not collapsed completely or not at the speeds that they did without additional factors that were weakening these structures. So then after 9/11, media sources said these towers had collapsed due to heat melting the steel, which, like you just said, Taylor, they didn't say jet fuel melted these steel beams.
Yeah.
They said
heat melted the fuel or melted the steel.
But anyway, these physicist, theologian, software engineer, and architect argue that these aircraft impacts and the resulting fires could not have weakened the building structure enough to create that large of a collapse. So, did
you say theologian in there too?
Yes.
That's funny. He's like, I'm a physicist, but also I know a lot about Jesus, and God would not allow the Twin Towers to fall if it wasn't for an explosion. Okay.
That's the David Ray Griffin guy. I don't know. But anyway.
Weird thing, and this is a little bit of a tangent, but
Please.
I remember, when I was like, I had to have been like maybe like 10 or 11 years old, and my mom had these like seminars from this guy named like Dr. Kent Homan or something like that.
Okay.
And
Homan?
Yeah, and he was like, I come from like a Christian household, so he was like talking about like creationism and stuff, kind of like debunking the quote unquote atheist lies. But then like there was this one part of the DVD where he got into like all these crazy conspiracies about how like the Kansas City bombing was actually like a planned detonation that was by like the government and all this shit. It was insane.
Holy
I was
shit.
like, and this was like, I'm pretty sure that this guy, the Dr. Kent, whatever his name was, he's like a really big like Christian scientist, like not Christian scientist as in like the religion, but
yes,
like a scientist who is a Christian. I'm pretty sure he debated Bill Nye at some point. Yeah, like
he went in the ring with Bill Nye.
He went into the ring, and I'm pretty sure that Bill Nye won. But
yeah,
rip. Anyway, yeah, just a weird memory.
Yeah,
that,
that's
like,
crazy.
I guess there's a, I mean, we've been knew there's a sect of Christians that are like,
oh yeah,
that are like conspiracy theorists, but like, I
Big
didn't
time.
think that there was like as many like scientific Christians that were conspiracy
which
theorists.
is really interesting to me.
Because like you can, I get you can be like a scientist and have like religious beliefs,
Sure,
and, as you should be allowed to,
yes.
but I just feel like you'd have a little bit more like rational thinking. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, maybe it was an inside job. That's what we're finding out.
Yes. So yeah, to talk about like the controlled demolition thing, like I said, I don't really fully believe that part of it.
Mm-hmm.
I could believe that the American government, either the people who hijacked these planes were like American government employees or whatever, or they were like hired and funded by the US government, and that the US like trained them to crash these planes in a specific way or whatever it was, or like, oh, make sure you crash it right on this level of the building because there's blah blah blah
the
right there.
Shaft and,
Sure,
like,
exactly,
the gap fuel or
exactly.
whatever.
So
Yeah.
I can definitely believe
I can
that.
see it. I can see it.
I can believe that like it was orchestrated to the point of this is where you need to hit the building, and the United States like made that happen.
For sure. I can share my next point.
Yeah.
After a word from our sponsor.
Oh, are we that far? Wow.
Yeah. Well, if we're doing two
Oh, true.
again, then
'Kay.
we're in
it.
As the great philosophers Sum 41 once said, we're in too deep.
'Cause I'm in too deep. Okay.
Yeah.
It's definitely time for an ad break if I start singing.
And we're back.
We're back.
I wanted to make a quick specification that with 9/11, a lot of times, you know, there will be like these fringe figures that are into conspiracy theories about 9/11, and one thing that I think is always when you're, you know, questioning any kind of like government or any kind of event like this, it's like you have to be careful you don't cross the like anti-Semitic line of no return when it comes to conspiracy theories, you know?
Because there always seems to be.
Yeah,
That is always included.
Yeah, and, you know, there's a lot of, you could get into a lot of historical and, you know, analysis of why Jews get pinned for a lot of things, but just to be clear, we're not in any way implying that, like, there's a new world order that's...
Absolutely not.
You know, protocols of the Elders of Zion kind of shit, like, that's not...
no.
We're just talking about the government and how fucked up it is.
Exactly, yeah. Which, like, kind of going along with that point as well is just, like, this 9/11, what happened on that day was obviously a tragedy. Like, a lot of people died that should not have died. It affected a ton of people, like... A lot of firefighters got fucked up from it. Like, this is a sad thing. This was a sad day. A lot of people died, and that's not good. I'm not saying that, like, this wasn't a bad thing.
Yeah.
All that we are arguing here is just, like, who's at fault for this and, like, the measure of, like, the U.S.'s involvement in this event, which is something that we talk about with a lot of things with the United States. And so, yeah.
Yeah.
Good clarifications to make.
As well as, like, you know, again, we're not, whether or not you believe, again, that the U.S. was involved, wasn't involved, whatever your thoughts are, you can't, you know, we're going to look into how the U.S. reacted to the situation in a second, and that's just undisputable fact.
Exactly,
so.
Exactly, yeah, which is, like, why which I think I kind of was saying at the top of the episode, but this is why we even started doing this episode, was we had come across some, like, post 9/11 propaganda, and it just really, like, got the gears going in my brain, where I was like, hold on a fucking second.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, because, like, I used to be, like, a person who did not ever see the side of, like, the 9/11 was an inside job thing.
Yeah.
I just, like, I was like, oh, the American government would never, like, I know the American government's evil, and I've pretty much thought that for a very long time, but I was like, oh, there's no way that they would, like, do that to Americans. Like, of course they're gonna go fuck over the Middle East and other places as much as they want, but they would never straight up do this to Americans. But, like, I stand corrected to myself, because, like, this same kind of shit happened in, what was it? Not Syracuse. That place in New York. Seneca Village. Is that what it was called?
Yeah, I think Seneca, Geneva, Ithaca.
It was like this area in New York that was like a huge, like, community of black people that was, like, very successful, that got bombed. And then there was,
I don't recall.
Well, anyway, obviously we're not completely talking about that today.
Look it up when you have a chance.
Yes. But anyway, and then there was also the bombing in Tulsa of the same thing. Like, it was a successful black community that the American government bombed. So anyway, long story short, basically I'm saying, like,
for sure,
the American government would do this kind of shit to their own people. So anyway.
Quick question. So we obviously know, or are supposing that George Bush did 9/11.
Right,
George W. Bush, is also very good friends with Ellen DeGeneres. Do you think that Ellen DeGeneres knew about 9/11? That's the real question that I want to answer.
Actually, Taylor, just several days before 9/11, there was an episode of the Ellen DeGeneres show in which she talked about... Just kidding. Who fucking knows? Ellen DeGeneres is such a weird fucking bitch. I don't even know.
My favorite, like, meme I ever saw on Twitter was, like, Ellen DeGeneres and then, like, hold it, like, hand clasp with Pete Buttigieg, and it was, like, the most underwhelming white gaze. And I thought that was very funny.
It's very true.
Anyway, continue.
Okay. So let's get into what happened at the Pentagon, eh? So, for the, like, conspiracy theorist, truthers side of it, they believe that the Pentagon was not hit by a plane, that it was actually hit by a missile launched by the U.S. government itself. And the sort of argument for this is that, like, the hole in the Pentagon walls was, like, way too small for a Boeing 747. It was, like, the hole itself was only, like, 60 feet across, and Boeing 747s are about 125 to 155 feet. No, sorry, it's 125 feet wide and 155 feet long. Yeah. And so, so it's arguing, like, how...
The hole should have been bigger.
Yeah. Which I'm like,
Well, actually... sorry. Well, and again, I guess it really depends on, like, what you want to believe, because, you know, you could argue it either way, but supposedly, I guess the answer is that, like, one of the wings of the Boeing 747 broke off, and then the other one, like, collapsed in on itself when the impact took place, or something like along those lines. So that was kind of like the explanation for why the hole isn't as big as it, like, should be technically. Right.
Yes. Which, I mean, I'm again, like, that's not too hard to argue. Which I when I was also coming across that research, which not to be, like, on your side, but they were saying, like, the debris from the plane was obviously seen all over, and then, like, people who were on the plane that survived were like, this happened.
Yeah, and, like, the debris was, like, inside, because the plane, like, was mostly inside the Pentagon, so, like, pictures from outside, there's not a lot of debris.
Right.
Because it broke into the...
Right.
And again, I mean, it's like, I mean, we weren't there. I don't know what exactly happened, but...
That being said, though, I don't know that the missile thing is necessarily something that I believe, but let's see. So in October 24th and 26th of the year 2000, there was this thing created called the Pentagon Mass Casualty Project, that had emergency response teams and, like, defense services and U.S. government officials were having these simulations in preparation of a plane crashing into the Pentagon in the year 2000. So that, like, raises my hackles for sure, and definitely fits with my feeling that, like, this was something, like, at least orchestrated by the U.S. government.
I mean, I can't even argue that one. That's just weird. Like, if it's a coincidence, it's, like, kind of a damning coincidence.
Exactly. Like it's really bad
like,
timing.
Fuck, dude. Like,
yeah.
Why didn't we, like, postpone that that plane training for 2 years? We should have. Yeah.
Yeah, and to kind of follow that up as well. So after 9/11 had happened, George Bush went on to say something like, the American government could have never expected that people would use planes as missiles, blah, blah, blah. But there's actually been, like, multiple accounts of planes, like, the U.S. government preparing for planes to fly into buildings or situations like that. Which, yeah, George Bush was literally like, this was never, and I think the Pentagon released something as well that was like, planes flying into buildings is just something that we never, ever knew,
like, oh,
ever.
No.
And we're like, okay, you guys.
Chill, dog.
But in 94, there was like 3 failed attempts of planes trying to crash into buildings, and one of those attempts was they were trying to crash into the White House. There was also a plot in 95 for Al-Qaeda terrorists to blow up planes as they were flying into America. Not exactly the same thing, but let's see. Okay, there was also NORAD ran a game in 2001, in April of 2001. They ran a game that the Pentagon was going to basically be crashed into with a plane. So, kind of the same thing as before.
Yeah.
Oh, and then on the morning of September 11th, the National Reconnaissance Office had scheduled an exercise simulating the crashing of an aircraft into their building.
Strange.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I don't know. That's some stuff. Some things.
Yeah.
Lots to think about.
Oh yeah, and then also NORAD had been running drills of using jets as weapons 2 years prior to September 11th. So anyway, long story short, basically, like, this was something that the American government definitely had an idea of. This was something that could happen.
Yeah. I don't know. Kind of sus, NORAD.
Very sus, NORAD.
Yeah. My last point that I have against the 9/11 truthers, the 9/11 truth freedom fighters, is with the Building 7, which is another building that was next to the Twin Towers that also collapsed. You know, it's kind of the same arguments as before, like where there was detonations that caused it to drop,
right?
Especially since it didn't actually get hit by an airplane.
Yep.
But what the point against that is that as the North Tower collapsed, considerable amounts of debris hit the side of Building 7. This debris weakened the structural integrity of the building, and along with the fires that were burning for several hours, the foundation of the building eventually collapsed. Which, again, kind of goes back to the same, like, detonation theory or whatever.
Exactly, yeah. And that was definitely something of, like, the truthers, that it was like, well, this building fell and nothing, like, there was no explanation as to why it fell, and it appeared as if, like, it had been an explosion coming from the building itself.
Yeah. And it was weird because it happened, like, hours later.
Right.
Because of, like, the fires that were burning inside of it. It took a while longer, I guess. I mean, again, I don't know. I'm no, what's the word?
Big steel beam guy.
Yeah, not a big steel beam guy, not an engineer, not a, architect? An architect, that's the word.
Yes.
I've been drinking. Anyway.
I guess I kind of have, like, 2 little points. This one I just found interesting. But so there has been people from other countries that have actually written books about 9/11 being an inside job, which I just feel like this kind of supports the idea and like breaks this stereotype that it's just like these American like tinfoil hat nut job people.
Yeah.
And like to me, I don't know, I always feel like people in other countries can see like the fuckery of the United States better than like us who are in it, because like we just live in it every day and we're like, oh,
this is just how it is.
This is
and
how
like and especially when like other people in other countries see like the direct effects of like what America does to their country that like fucks over their lives, you know?
Because they've got like a wider lens on this shit.
Exactly.
So just a couple of these books that you can read if you so wish. There was thesis by a researcher from the French National Center for Scientific Research that was published in Le Monde. And then Thierry Messiaen released this, I think it was a book or kind of like a long essay called L'effroyable imposture, which means 9/11, the big lie. As well as there was a book in 2003 called The CIA and September 11th, which was from Andreas von Bülow from Germany.
Word.
Operation 9/11 from the German journalist Gerhard Wisniewski? I don't know, you guys. German's so hard. Something like that.
Word.
Anyway, the American government has dismissed these as anti-American.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah. Well, they said this is like...
They weren't written here.
Exactly.
Like, what the fuck you mean?
Yeah. They're like, this was anti-American propaganda.
Yeah.
And it's like...
I'm sure.
Well, I mean, sure, but like also...
Isn't like... I mean, I don't know. I guess, like, if you're gonna be like, oh, this is anti-American propaganda, it's like, well, okay, then you have to acknowledge the, like, pro-American propaganda that you've been feeding everybody.
Exactly.
Like, I mean, you know, if you're gonna say that, like, what happened to, like, you know, the marketplace of ideas in America? Like, can't people argue against something?
Exactly. Okay, my last point here is, I think, my favorite point, which is the insider trading that occurred. So, just before 9/11, there was this huge amount of something called put options that were placed on stock on, excuse me, I had a little hiccup. Stocks on...
Puts are gnarly.
What?
Puts are gnarly.
They are gnarly. And these put options were placed on stock for United Airlines as well as American Airlines. A put option basically is something that allows the holder of the stock to sell that stock at a specified price or at a specified date to the writer of the put.
No matter what, like, the stock actually falls down to.
Exactly.
Like, you have the right to sell it at, like, a higher price.
Yes. Thank you, Taylor. Very well said. So, an analysis into the possibility of insider trading on 9/11 says, quote, a measure of abnormal long put volume was also examined and seen to be at abnormally high levels in the days leading up to the attacks. Consequently, the paper concludes that there is evidence of an unusual option market activity in the days leading up to September 11th that is consistent with investors trading on advanced knowledge of the attacks. And that's by Alan M. Putishman from the Journal of Business. Of these traders have never been made public. And there is, like, theories that it was, like, government officials doing this.
Yeah. No, and that makes... Well, and what's so interesting about that is, like, there was insider trading that happened for the COVID pandemic, you know?
I was just gonna say that! I was just gonna talk about that. Yes.
Sorry.
No. I'm glad that you brought it up. I'm, like, stoked that you had the same thought. Because, yes, exactly. And you literally cannot, like, you can't argue this one, at least, like, this did actually happen. Like, there was these put options put on these airlines very, like, soon-ish before 9/11. And, like, a huge amount of them. So,
You're like, it's a little sketchy.
Very sus. And yeah, as Taylor just said, like, the same fucking thing happened with COVID, and, like, that's inarguable, you know?
Yeah.
Like...
Yeah, that's just facts that happened. Like, they, whatever fucking politicians it were, found out that COVID was a thing, took all of their money out of their stocks right before it fucking crashed. Like, it was insane.
Yes, exactly. And, like, one of the, like, truther things is that, like, you know, the American government let it happen kind of idea, and there was, like, theories that the American government had kind of been tipped off beforehand, or there had been, like, some pretty severe warnings from Al-Qaeda that this was going to happen, and the American government was like...
Which, honestly, like, that seems like it'd be more believable to me, because, like, you know, like, the government, the FBI, whoever you're going to say, even the CIA, like, I'm sure they get tips, like, all the time about things. And it's like, how, you know, even if they weren't necessarily, like, willfully being like, yeah, we're just going to let this happen, like, maybe they just didn't take it as seriously as they should have.
Right.
But, like, maybe some politicians did and, you know, put a bunch of put options on airlines or whatever.
Right.
Like, maybe it just wasn't taken as seriously as it should have been by the people who, like, needed to, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And that's, like, definitely one that I could also get behind, like, strongly, was, yeah, that, like, they had an idea of this happening, but the American government had this, like, need and want to get into Afghanistan and Iraq and etc.
Like,
Middle Eastern countries.
If it happens.
Yeah, and so they're like, oh, this would be a great opportunity for this thing. And so, which I had another thing. Where did that go? There was something else that was like on, like, while 9/11 was happening, where did I put that? Okay, well, I'm just gonna try and talk about it off the cuff. Oh wait, is this
real off the cuff of you?
Oh yes, okay, here it is. So, while on 9/11, as the crashes and things were happening, or the hijackings were happening, the Federal Aviation Administration didn't notify NORAD, who's like they basically track like all of the like aerospace shit in America. They didn't notify NORAD of the hijackings of these 4 flights, in time for an aircraft to get to these hijack flights and help them. Also, there was, like, one of the like, rescue planes that was sent ended up going, like, east out onto the sea instead of going to Washington, which, like, delayed their arrival to the scene, obviously way too fucking late. So yeah, there was just, like, all this shit of, like, they're like, well, I don't know where these flights are. What's going on? And, like, shit got all fucking scrambled around because they were, like, poorly communicating, quote unquote, where these, like, planes were, which I think could definitely be a big argument to the letting it happen thing, or honestly even to the, like, America actually did this thing where it was just like, we're just not gonna say anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, there you go. I just totally, that just came back to me and I was like, oh, wait.
You gotta say it.
Yes. Yes, and you know what won't hijack a plane? Is that bad? I shouldn't say that.
Let's see. I don't know. Are we gonna get canceled for that?
Really bad?
I don't know. I've heard
sorry.
worse. I don't feel like you should be sorry.
It just came out.
It's okay.
Anyway. Ads.
All right, we're back.
Hi.
From the ad break. Great transition. Nothing went wrong, and you didn't hear anything.
No, and we will never get canceled ever.
Yeah, I mean, again, I was telling Phoebe, like, I'm just waiting for us to get canceled at this point. We can go, what do they call, Cancelvania. We can, travel to Cancelvania. We'll hang out with, I don't know, who's there, Louis C.K.
Oh, God.
Who the fuck else has gotten canceled? Doja Cat?
Everyone.
Honestly, if Doja Cat's in Cancelvania,
I'm
like,
there.
sign me up,
yeah,
please.
I'm
Holy
gonna hang out
shit.
with her. Now we're really gonna get canceled. Propaganda, you guys. Let's talk
Propaganda. So yeah, I don't think that if you're listening to this podcast, you're surprised that America does a lot of propaganda.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of like their favorite thing to do, basically.
It's kind of it's like our thing. You know, like
signature American thing.
Like, you know how Patrick, whatever his name from Fall Out Boy, like his thing when he was younger was like the sideburns? This is America's sideburns. Is what I'm trying to say.
Patrick Stump.
Yeah, Patrick Stump.
I love him, honestly.
Me too.
Is Fall Out Boy canceled?
I don't think so.
Okay, nice.
I haven't heard anything yet, but don't speak until you...
Yeah.
And maybe we could cancel Fall Out Boy for something.
Let's try.
Well, okay, I guess the only thing I don't know if it's necessarily something cancel-worthy, but some people were getting a little heated over, like in the song, one of their songs, they say the word gypsy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's fair, I guess.
I don't know. But anyway, propaganda.
We don't need to get into that right now. Propaganda, yeah. So, let me get words to come out of my mouth. My inspiration for this episode was I was scrolling through Twitter and I came across these videos from like, I want to say like 2002 on Disney Channel. And it was like these kind of like the Adult Swim like bumps. It was like these things that they would put in between commercial breaks. That was like the actors from Disney Channel shows at the time, like talking about whatever the fuck. Like there was like one that was like Disney 411 and they would like go around and talk about like different cultures or something. Definitely not happening around 9/11 though. That came years later. Anyway, but I came across this post on Twitter that was a video of these Disney Channel actors like really emotionally talking about 9/11 and like there's one with literally Laura Bush who's like on Disney Channel, she's like, after 9/11, it made my heart so proud to see American flags everywhere, and everywhere I would look there would be American flags. And then like on that same one, like Disney Channel actors were like, oh wow, like I just love seeing the flag. It makes me really happy when my friends have a flag on their car or flag here or flag. It's like, it was so creepy, like it made my skin crawl. But the one that like was definitely the most like really set me off was these Disney Channel stars talking about how they talk about 9/11 all the time. Like Hilary Duff is like, I talk about 9/11 with my family and it just makes me feel really good to talk about it. And even though it was a year ago, it feels like it just happened and blah, blah, blah.
We should never stop talking about 9/11.
Which, like, isn't literally, like, the tagline for 9/11 is, like, always remember, never forget?
Yeah,
is that
never
what they
forget,
say?
yeah.
Yeah, and that's, I'm just, like, name another fucking, like, American tragedy type thing that we do this for. Like, nothing, I don't feel like, has been this, like, pounded into your face. Like, literally every single year when I was in elementary school, we would go out front on 9/11 and have, like, a big fucking thing for it. And, yeah.
Well, and it's like I was, like, we were talking about a little bit. It's like, what if that was, like, what if we had the same vibe for, like, the Titanic, you know? Like, and, you know, I guess it's, like, it's hard because it, you know, if, say we're not taking, like, the conspiracy end of it. It's like, again, 9/11 was a tragedy.
Definitely.
It's good to remember the people who died in 9/11 fondly and to honor them.
Yes.
But, you know, it's like, I don't know, like, for instance, like, we don't, and granted, these weren't civilians, but, like, we don't talk about, like, Pearl Harbor as much as 9/11.
Literally going to compare it to that, yes.
Yeah.
And, like, the way that 9/11 is talked about in this, like, propagandized kind of way, it's never framed in the way that it's like, oh, let's talk about the victims who passed away. It's always like, America is so amazing. We are so united after this. We need to stay America forever. Yeah. Like, it's always framed in a way that is, like, pro-America, pro-troops, you know. It's never, ever, I don't even know the names of the, like, it's never framed in that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, the only thing I think that was ever really, a kind of like victim perspective on 9/11 was a movie called like 200 Minutes That Changed America, something like that.
Yeah, I think I've heard about that,
It's
but I
like-
don't know that I've ever watched it.
I have. It's pretty disturbing, but it's like handheld cam footage of people
Oh.
who were like in New York at the time showing just like
Yeah.
all the fucking shit happening. And I feel like that was honestly, I don't remember now like how propagandized it was because I haven't watched it for a really, really long time. But in my remembering brain, that was like really the only piece of something attached to 9/11 that wasn't like America, you know?
America.
It was
yeah.
like, wow, look at this really horrific thing that killed a whole bunch of people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Want to talk about Islamophobia?
Yeah, let's do it.
It's bad.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, so I did a little bit of research again. So, I mean, with the increase in pro-America propaganda that came after 9/11, there was obviously, and I feel like most people kind of know about this now, like there was obviously a very large influx of Islamophobia that happened. Again, Islamophobia wasn't created by 9/11. There obviously people have been racist and Islamophobic towards other people for a long time, but so after the 9/11 terror attacks, the U.S. leaned heavily into its America First propaganda, demonizing the Middle East.
Yep.
In the year 2000, there was 28 recorded hate crimes against Muslims. In the year 2001, that number shot up to 481.
Jesus Christ.
It was like the second lowest hate crime, like thing to be hate crimed for, and then it became the second highest in 1 year.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. 9/11 was the catalyst for creating such lovely institutions such as the Department of Homeland Security and Immigrations and Custom Enforcement, aka ICE. Which both never done anything wrong, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Oh, completely innocent.
Yeah.
Best government organizations.
Yeah, like
Totally not
S-tier.
completely. Yeah.
S-tier government organizations.
Totally not completely corrupt and
Absolutely.
horrendously evil.
The DHS definitely didn't like black bad people into unmarked white vans last year
Yep.
during the protests.
Yep. Yeah, and just like invade U.S. cities and like terrorize people. And ICE for sure doesn't just like steal people all the fucking time for no goddamn reason.
Yeah, all good stuff.
Love it.
So deportation rates, and this part I thought was interesting when you get into some of like the facts behind it. Deportation rates, the decade before 9/11 were about at 1.6 million, and then grew to 2.3 million in the decade afterwards. And again, obviously, because they created ICE, so they have like a literal institution, government institution that was like, your job is to find and deport people.
Yep.
Like that's what you do.
Yep.
Though the number of deportations has increased, the amount of terrorism has not. The amount of deportation done on purely immigration violations increased from 1.2 million to 1.9 million after the attacks. And I think a big part of that is like how they sold the creation of these organizations was like, oh, like we need to combat terrorism. We need to go in and be like, and catch all these terrorists that are immigrants or whatever. And it's like terrorism. In the decade prior to 9/11, there were only 88 cases involving terrorism charges, and the 10 years following the attacks only saw 37 cases. So it's like of all the people that ICE has deported, 37 cases since 9/11. So I guess that would have been 2011 for the 10 years after 9/11. Were actually involved terrorism. Like it's fucking stupid.
Yeah. Well, and it just like reminds me of like during World War II, the like fear of Japanese Americans and the response to Pearl Harbor and the way that like Japanese Americans were like so vilified that they literally created like concentration camps or internment camps for Japanese Americans. Like, and that same kind of like feeling started happening with Muslims in America and immigrants in America.
Yeah. I mean, pretty much. And they, I feel like by 2001, they weren't allowed to necessarily have like concentration camps and like call them that and like take people from their houses like they have, you know.
Yeah.
We still do because we have the cages for sure, but like people living in America, I feel like it'd be hard to convince. Like, yeah, maybe not. I don't know. I guess it depends because you know, it's just it's hard to talk. Like it's awful.
Yeah.
Continue. It's
Okay.
all you.
I'll jump into it. So, yeah, also worth mentioning is the Patriot Act that was passed when was it? Let me see. Oh, I don't know. Literally, like, right after 9/11, signed by George Bush, of course, and this was, so the Patriot Act is an acronym standing for Uniting and Strengthening America by Providing Appropriate Tools Required to Intercept and Obstruct Terrorism, which, like, kind of exactly like Taylor was just saying, it's, like, just this big thing in order to, like, fucking get involved in people's lives because of this, like, false war on terror. Same thing with the war on drugs. I mean, it's this, like, created thing. So, basically, with the Patriot Act, they now could, I mean, the surveillance levels shot through the fucking roof. They tapped domestic and international phones, intercepted, like, literally any and all communication ever. Like, you know, that whole thing of where people will, like, tape the little camera on their laptop and everything. But I'm like, it's fucking real, though. Like,
the NSA is, they don't fuck around.
It's so scary. Like, they know everything. They know everything about everyone. And that's thanks to the Patriot Act. Like, they were able to just, because of the propaganda that surrounded 9/11 and the way that they pushed this, like, terrorists are going to kill you and your whole family and everything is bad, it was like, I think it softened people a bit to allow the United States government to do this, which also it's not like we even really had a say, but you know what I mean?
Not be as outraged, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And so now, like, fucking Facebook can search into my entire life, and yeah. Let's see. Right. So yeah, this also allowed, like, American agencies to use any and all resources for counterterrorism efforts. Like, you said, the whole blank check thing. They can do fucking whatever they wanted now, which justified the entire, like, war in the Middle East. As well as this increased penalties for terrorism crimes. And this opened up the list of things that qualified as terrorism and really, like, expanded it to way, way, way more vague terms.
That's what I was going to say is, like, you know, I feel like this is when, like, the definition of terrorism got really murky.
Yes.
But also, like, because I just feel like it's a funny dichotomy because, like, you know, the U.S. government and, like, the right will call, like, a bunch of things terrorists, like, just whenever they want. But then also they, like, have a hard time accepting that, like, white Americans can be terrorists, you know, too,
exactly,
you know? Like,
exactly.
Fucking, what's his name? Tim, whatever the fuck. He did the Kansas City bombing.
Oh, yes.
Tim something.
I don't know his name,
remember.
but yeah. Well, and it's like how, the KKK wasn't recognized as a terrorist organization until, what, like, last year or something?
Yeah, it was like 2 years ago.
Yeah. Like, I'm like, if anything is a fucking terrorist organization, it is literally, like, that's, like, in their doctrine of the KKK. It's, like, terrorism.
It's, like, what they do.
Yes. Like, fuck. And it's just, like, how Antifa, which isn't, like, even really that real of a thing, is, like, Antifa terrorists, and it's, like, Antifa's, like, really not even real, you guys. Like,
it's, like, not a... Yeah, I don't know. It's like a mindset. It's not really like a... It's not really like a thing, you know?
Antifa is a way of life.
Exactly. It's a lifestyle.
But, yeah, and it's just, like, every white American bomber, every white American mass shooter, never is it called what it is, which is terrorism.
Yeah, and what's interesting is, because, you know, I've done a couple of videos on incels and stuff too, but it's the same thing. Like, these attacks that have happened on women are acts of terrorism against a group of people, and that group is women. And it's like, but nobody calls them terrorist acts. Because of misogyny, and also because most of the victim or most of the perpetrators are white, So it's like, and it's the same thing. It's how the media portrays it. It's stupid.
Yes, yes. Like Kyle Rittenhouse, terrorist.
Yeah.
Like, he went to those protests for a specific reason to target a specific group of people. That is a terrorist.
Terrorist. Elliot Rodgers, terrorist. Mm-hmm. Killed a bunch of women because he couldn't get laid.
Yep. I cannot remember the name of the person, but just recently who went to that, like, massage parlor and killed a bunch of those women, who were mostly, like, Asian American. Terrorist.
And it was, like, because that one's very interesting because it's, like, kind of in between. It's, like, there's, like, racist vibes, obviously, but also, like, incel, misogynist vibes. Like,
a little combination of both.
Well, yeah. They say that, like, the misogyny and anti-feminism is, like, the gateway drug to the alt-right. So.
Yeah. Yeah. It definitely is.
Anyway.
Yeah, but more on, like, the propaganda surrounding 9/11. I mean, the Pledge of Allegiance being said in public schools, I think, was a thing that had been around for a while. Yeah. But following 9/11, it definitely took, like, a huge uptick and, like, a huge, like, like, shaming if you weren't participating in it, basically. Which, like, just that in and of itself, I think, is something that is worth talking about. The fact that, like, kids have to literally fucking stand up and say the Pledge of Allegiance in schools every single morning. Like, that's a weird that's some weird fucking cult shit.
It's strange. Also, fun fact.
Yes.
Did you know that in the Pledge of Allegiance, it wasn't until 1954 that they added the words "under God."
Yeah, that's
right. And after one nation, it was used to be one nation, indivisible.
That's right.
But they added "under God."
Yep. Yeah. Yep.
Which I thought was, like, I don't know, weird, because you'd think that was like a old, like, timey American thing, but, like, no, it was 1954.
Yeah, and I feel like that does kind of make sense with, like, the big, like, conservative Christian, kind of deal there.
For sure. But yeah, no, definitely cult shit. Like, being like, stand up every morning and pledge your allegiance to a nation. And it's like...
That's like... That is something that if... And tangenting, but whatever, this whole episode is a tangent. Right. That is something that if that was happening in, say, like, North Korea, that is something that the U.S. would never fucking shut the fuck up about, ever. They would be like, look at this weird, creepy thing they have to do every day. Pledge allegiance to their nation. But, like, that is what you're fucking doing.
It's gross, and I don't know, and it's like that kind of shit where it's like, the idea, I guess, of, like, pledging your allegiance, like, I don't feel like I, in a personal sense, can pledge my allegiance to anything, like,
right.
I don't trust anything to be, like, good enough to, like, put my full allegiance into and not ever question it.
Yes, and it's like, I mean, we're indoctrinated into that from, like, childhood, right? Because I'm there in, like, kindergarten saying the fucking Pledge of Allegiance.
And you just say it because you're like, these are words that we all stand up and do. Like...
Yes, and you don't fully conceptualize, like, what the word allegiance really, really means. Like, that's a big thing to say.
Yeah, like...
That's a commitment.
Think of the word allegiance aside from pledge of, and it's like, it's kind of weird. Like,
yes.
You're committing yourself to a thing, you know?
And in this case, a imperialist fucking nation.
Well, and it just goes back to, like, that idea we were talking about last time where it's like, the German military doesn't have to follow orders blindly.
Yep.
Because look at what fucking happened, and it's like, it's the same. Like, America, like, people just follow orders. They follow this allegiance blindly.
Yes.
Or they're, like, indoctrinated into it. And it's like...
Yes. Yeah, even, like, just beyond our, like, military troops, like, civilians do because of, like, in the first fucking grade, you stand up every day and literally pledge your allegiance to this nation. That is so fucking creepy.
Yeah.
Also, like, propaganda, just... Like I was saying, where we would kind of have that memorial outside of school every year for 9/11, there was also just, like... I can't think of a single school year that I didn't, like... sit and talk about 9/11 like intensely. Like which I understand it's a history thing, you know, whatever, but every other history thing was like, we went through it, but nothing was as heavily, like, intensely talked about as 9/11.
It's true.
We even talked about 9/11 at my fucking hair school.
Really?
Yes.
Weird.
We had a program about 9/11 at fucking Paul Mitchell.
Jeez.
And I just kind of was like, why? Like,
what is
I
this?
It's we're at hair school right now. Like,
I'm learning how to do hair.
Like, we're not talking about historical things, and this isn't like a public school where I need to learn about like current events. I'm at hair school. Teach me hair.
Yeah. I mean, arguably, public school doesn't teach you real history.
No,
either,
definitely not.
I feel like the biggest thing I'm salty about in all of the world in my entire life is just how fucking dirty the public school system did me. Holy shit.
It's unreal how fucked up that is. Well,
Like,
the public school system is literally just like a farm for getting kids into the military, because literally like the way I'm really going off here. And I feel like you had another point to make, but I'm sorry.
You got
I'm like,
Go for it. Go.
The way that like the school system is structured is literally designed to feed you into the military. Like the way that you are, first of all, forced to follow whatever authority has to say, the bell system that you go off of, how early you have to get up, which I think you have to get up earlier in the military, but still, following dress code orders. Like, there are so many pieces of the U.S. public school system that just farms you right into the military, which we see constantly.
They're sitting there recruiting people right in the hallways.
Yes! Oh my fucking god. Like, which, to bring it to 9/11, like, literally after 9/11 happened, the amount of people that enlisted in the military, like, shot the fuck up. And it was, like, the amount of, like, specifically I remember, like, military commercials happening, fucking the Folgers Coffee ass commercial, where the guy, like, comes home from the military. Like, the amount of, like, commercials for the U.S. military that were streaming on the fucking TV.
Yeah, and then like all those fucking like early 2000s like Go Army commercials and shit. Like I used to see so many of those.
Well, and like every like superhero movie has like an Air Force or something commercial beforehand. Like, like there was a constant pushing of like, we need people to be in our military to help with this war on terror.
And that could even be a whole nother episode, is like the military Hollywood like industrial complex, because like you have to like, to get the military to help you with like a movie, you have to like make the military look good in that movie. Yes. Like, it's fucked up.
Yes.
Anyway,
starting to lose my shit a little bit.
we can start closing it up. Honestly, we've hit the allotted contractual time that we have a contract with no one for.
Yes, so. With Moonshine.
Moonshine expects us to have an hour every Monday.
Yep. In conclusion, I guess, like we've kind of been saying this whole episode, no matter what side you land on, whether it was like the American government either allowed or orchestrated 9/11, or 9/11 was an event that happened in America, you cannot deny that the way that the United States government manipulated this situation following 9/11 was so purposeful and structured, and like was completely used to justify their invasion of the Middle East. Couldn't
have said it better myself.
Boom.
That's it.
Oh, which I also wanted to say, like, I feel like the United States had seen what had happened before with, like, the Vietnam War and the huge outcry against the Vietnam War and all the protesting and everything, and doubled down on the propaganda after 9/11 in order to justify the Iraq and Afghanistan wars, because they were like, we don't want another Vietnam War situation here.
Well, and even the event of 9/11 is going to be such a like push to have again, like, you know, America can go do whatever they want because now they're fighting terrorism and, like...
Exactly.
You know, and then, like, we've seen, like, look at what terrorism did. It crashed these planes into the towers. And, again, it's a tragedy, but...
Yeah.
You know, it was a little bit different, whereas, like, by the time of the Vietnam War, people were kind of like, hey, we've been fighting communism for, like... decades, dude. Like,
yeah. Well, and now we've been fighting the Middle East for decades.
Exactly, and I think everybody's fucking over it.
Yeah, which again, it's like even if 9/11 was a terrorist organization, Al Qaeda came over to fuck up the United States. Like, the United States response to this was, I would say, disproportionate.
I mean, yeah, and you can, you know, there's a whole lot you can talk about and get into as far as, like, yeah, we went over there. Did we actually help anything, you know?
No.
Like, again, I'm pretty sure I've heard a bunch of news stories where, like, because we've pulled out of Afghanistan and now the Taliban are back in there, you know?
I was just
going
to mention.
The fuck did we even do?
Nothing. Nothing. We went in there, we imperialized, as we always do.
Made a bunch of money.
Fucking monopolized the oil industries over there. And then when, like... people have started saying now, like, same as the Vietnam War, they're like, we've kind of been, like, in Afghanistan for, like, a long fucking time. What's up? Then America was like, okay, we're pulling out now, setting nothing in place. I'm going off again. Because this is what the fucking American military does, is they invade these countries. It's a fucking imperialist regime. They go and invade these countries to conquer these countries, reset their entire, like, structure that they had, ignoring cultural differences, ignoring, you know, geographical differences, everything, fucking everything over, and then piecing out, not doing anything to help them, like, survive without this new shitty structure that the United military has put into place.
Honestly,
I gotta get a grip.
I mean, I don't think you have to, because it's okay it's okay to be unhinged when it comes to the military.
True, very
and just
true.
America, it's bad.
Yeah.
No, you're absolutely correct. I mean, it's a classic America move.
Classic America. But do yourself a favor and just look up, like, some of any 9/11 propaganda surrounding this shit. Like, specifically, the ones that just really got me because they were marketed to me as a child was the Disney ones, which I think... I can just never shut up, apparently. Which I think is what really says something about this situation in particular, is the way that this propaganda was pushed on children. Like, they had ads for this shit on fucking Disney Channel. Like, it's beyond just normal propaganda, you know, that's put in the eyes of, like, adults. The 9/11 situation was dumbed down and manufactured to these little kids, so you could be like, hey kids, look how bad this was. Terrorists are really scary, so your parents are gonna go to war now. Like, and
never forget that America is always is always right and is always the best.
Oh, I'm so proud of America. You should be so proud of America. Like, that was always what was, like, fed to us as kids, specifically following 9/11. Yeah,
it's fucked.
It's fucked. Okay.
Anyway, want to plug anything?
Yeah, I guess we should. So, to shout out our little last time commenter, which I never have just pulled up. So, from last week's episode, we asked, what should Taylor's lo-fi name be? And friend of the pod, Justin commented, and he said, Chernobyl child. With in Chernobyl the E is a 3, the O is a 0, and in child the I is a 1. So it's kind of like
it's kind of meta.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe.
Pretty cool.
Pretty hip.
Pretty hip and happening. You can leave comments on our Instagram at Remarks Podcast.
Please do.
Which our little shout out game this week, I would love to hear what your favorite, like, George Bush mishap was, sort of. Like, any silly George Bush thing that you have. For instance, one of my favorite George Bush things was that time he choked on a pretzel. I just think it's really fucking funny.
Does it have to be specifically George W. Bush?
Yes.
All right.
George W.
not the first one.
Yeah, the 9/11 George
Yeah.
W.
The 9/11 George Bush, not the ignoring AIDS George Bush.
Yes. Both bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, so leave your favorite George W. Bush doing something silly.
Word. Twitter is @RemarksPod, and YouTube channel for me is The Lefty Agenda.
That's right. Oh, and our TikTok is @Remarks Podcast.
Yeah, we have 2 TikToks
We have
now.
2 whole TikToks.
Sick. Anyway, I think that's it.
Okay, thanks for listening. And
Okay,
love you.
bye.
Bye.